All right, so my name is Roger Hammer. I manage the software development and services areas of CM First Group. Also have gotten to know the Automate RPA tool. So I'm providing the sessions related to RPA this conference. So we'll have this session today, which will be kind of an overview and use cases. And I will show a little bit of demonstration. And then on Wednesday morning, we'll do a hands-on session. So if you would like to join that session, please go to plex2e.com and go ahead and click on that track and join on Wednesday morning, where we can get a little more hands dirty at that point. All right, so we're going to provide an overview of RPA, talk a little bit about how companies approach to adopting RPA. And then we're going to talk about a few real-world use cases. And in that, we'll introduce Automate. There's a new version out, 11.6. And also, we'll dig into, understand, and we'll take a quick look at the Botstore, as they call it, and just look at what kind of bots are available. And we'll look at a live session of Automate RPA with some applications. And we'll talk through a little bit about how it works and how you interact with it. All right, so what's happening in RPA? So there's different levels of use of RPA, as you can imagine. You can work just on your local desktop with a personal productivity, basically automating your own tasks. So you can get a desktop version of these tools, automate redundant or repetitive tasks that you may do on a regular basis, and make that much easier and efficient and not have to do those. Many times that may be if someone has a process where they would move data from one application to another, or maybe it's more like I get an email and a certain subject line can trigger the RPA to grab the data from that email or the file in the email and load it into Excel, or maybe even populate the application. Now that's an individual task. It could be as simple as doing some Windows tasks or your email tasks, all those kinds of things. And then you can do kind of step it up a level and do business process automation. So now you're starting to talk about a number of people who do the same kinds of things, and even maybe across departments where you're connecting applications and enabling automation for, again, repetitive tasks, things that humans really don't have to think a lot about in order to accomplish. So take that out of the hands of the humans and allow them to do the really important and more interesting work of considering, data and making decisions. And then kind of the enterprise level is center of excellence. So some companies are really bringing in RPA in a big way and beginning to look across their organization, across their divisions, and looking for areas to implement, usually still starting in a particular area, but also doing business process assessments across the organization and determining where RPA is going to best benefit their organization and make a big difference in terms of ROI and cutting time that just doesn't need to be spent by people. So what are those approaches? Kind of how do you get started? Of course, proof of concept, and everyone wants to kind of try something out. And as I mentioned, desktop automation, giving individuals the ability to automate small tasks that they do day to day. And then you've got, like I said, high frequency, multi-person automation. And then the idea of the higher volume. So you can do both what they call front of glass automation, where maybe there's even interaction with the human and it takes care of a number of tasks in an automated sequence, but it needs some human input or at least approval to do something. And then you can also do kind of a back end type of robotic process automation, where you're going to just automate an entire process. Humans don't touch it. It runs in the background. It could be an IT process. Maybe it's a support process where you're gathering ticket information that come in and automatically solving a problem like a password reset, something simple like that. But a lot of times maybe humans have to take care of that. And just take that off their plate so they can, again, focus on the more difficult tasks. So what are some of the use cases for IBMI? One is single sign-on. There is an app for a bot for single sign-on. It's going to sync with Active Directory. It's going to bring that data into the enterprise identity mapping table for the IBMI. And then it's going to use a client access emulator to log on. And so here's a quick little kind of session here, a little video of that happening and walking through the process and dealing with the need here. So I guess that was the human steps, and now you've got the automation. So you can see a matter of seconds, everything's there. Everything's set up. All right. So now we've got the idea of data entry or extraction, or extraction in this case. You can use a browser interface, any kind of graphical interface, green screen, of course. And in this case, we're going to show multiple green screens executing this process. So extracting data, entering that data from one application to another. So, you may have people doing this kind of work where you've got one application that's, running certain type of your business applications, and they need to extract that data and move it over. Or maybe just a data entry process where data is coming in, again, through email or even paper. And then, of course, you have application integration. In this case, we're going to look at checking an inbox. I mentioned that earlier. Running an API into multiple applications, reconciling reports that are related to those. So it's going to check the report along with an Excel here. And we can see a full, in this case, kind of a real process automation. You've got the input, you've got the report coming in. Once you have those, and then you can take the next step, checking those totals, and then you can check to see if they balance in this case. So you can have a true or false. If they do not balance, then you can send an output, in this case, to another application if it does, or if it doesn't, then maybe an error. And so we'll set this up so that it, first that I think it comes out true, and then we'll show the same thing where it comes out false. Oh, this one's false, excuse me. Okay, so this one is the one where it changed the number, so it came out and showed that it did not match. And so therefore it's going to send a ticket in order for someone to do something about that report, requiring that human interaction. Of course, another option would be user provisioning. A lot of different types of those. So you may have an Exchange or Active Directory, obviously IBMI, single sign-on. You could use these for change requests, managing change requests, or migrating users. You may have a new employee onboarding. So you may need to bring them in and set them up on all your IT systems, give them the accounts they need, and you want to fully automate that. Or you have an employee leave and you want to automate the removal of that employee from those applications so they no longer have access. So let's talk a moment about Automate. So the latest version of Automate now provides a step recorder. So rather than, even simpler than the drag and drop, you can now literally click a button, take a step for the web or a desktop application, and I'll show you a little bit of that. And you just click a button and do each step, and it automatically places all the right commands into the sequence. And then, of course, you can do business process automation and build kind of a no-code automation option. and then the workflow, the full workflow with triggers and decisions that can drive processes that are very sophisticated. So some of the types here, so they've got optical character recognition and PDF, machine learning. There's machine learning here, particularly in the intelligent automation piece, where you may have documents that are very similar but not exactly the same, and the automation can train on how to find that information and translate it correctly into an application. So you could have scanned documents or other digital documents where it can find this information. Of course, API integration, we do have a piece of that in one of our scenarios we'll show you today. And then, of course, cloud native actions, and native integrations, and of course, control logic. So you can do all kinds of different paths. And then, of course, you have the opportunity for the machine learning. And that's really where that I mentioned earlier, being able to analyze documents and get information where not every document is precisely the same. So some of the new features, more improved accessibility to some APIs, particularly REST APIs in the documentation. Shipping now, we're used to be shipping with SQL 2008, now with 2014. Some new additional terminal actions, some upgraded file actions, XML handling, and more browser actions. There's actually an older version of the browser functionality that works with Internet Explorer. Now you've got Firefox and Chrome and Edge available in the later browser functions. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the Automate Recorder functionality, which really is interesting because it allows you to automate very quickly the building of these steps. It's not all encompassing in every possibility. So you can build all the things that you can do with it, interactions, entries, things like that. But then you can always go back and edit that, which is really unique. So you can edit that and add additional functions by drag and drop to get more sophisticated capabilities. And then you can still edit that recorded functionality using the recorder. So it's very flexible. And there's a picture there of the types of, or the way the recorder looks, and we'll show you that, a little bit of that in a moment. And so you can, again, create those real world recordings. It is easier to debug and edit and update. It does, again, give it a really easy approach to, if you want to use or give this to your desktop users and give them the ability to do even simple tasks that take them a little extra time, and they can automate those and maybe just click and begin, working on something else. So what does a project life cycle normally look like? Of course, we're going to bring in, a phased approach. You're going to install, you're going to have some demos, you're going to have some formal training, and then you're going to look at assessment, selecting the right process within your organization. It's really important to focus on a process that you can be very successful with. And normally that's going to be one that is very repetitive and maybe doesn't include a lot of human interaction initially. Keep it simple and build something that has a high ROI, because it's just a task that nobody is really required to do and can be automated easily. And then you start looking at a higher level process, right? What processes within the organization are going to really benefit by some kind of automation using RPA? It may be complete automation. It could be automating just certain steps. And, if somebody has to complete work on a task and then email something, that can easily be automated, particularly if it's data entry and then email that data. All of that task can be automated. And then maybe somebody still has to process a portion of that and pass it on to the next step. And maybe that's an email that hits a location and is monitored by the RPA tool, and then that email can be processed. I have seen EDI tasks that are really almost like email tasks or file transfer tasks where an input can be, it just shows up and the RPA can watch that folder, pick up that data, fully process it. And so nobody has to really even monitor that. And then the RPA, of course, can give you anomaly reports to let you know if something went wrong, the format of the data was wrong. Some things like that could happen. And then, of course, once you've implemented some of those, you're going to want to look at an ROI to see how you're doing. And, normally you're going to find a pretty high ROI and a fairly quick payback. I mean, you can get payback in weeks or at least months in many cases, depending on the complexity of the task. And then, of course, you're going to want to follow up and learn, right? You want to learn from the steps that you've been through and reapply those, correct anything that you need to correct and reapply them to the next either task or process. So this is just one option here to get help for building bots yourself. Well, as I said, we'll talk about a Botstore or, working through a process with maybe some of your frontline management of what are the processes that would be really interesting and helpful to automate. And then, again, a bot creation workshop. And of course, these are the kinds of things that are available in the Botstore. Okay, so I'm going to talk now about a RPA application that we built. It's kind of an onboarding application. It uses, we have two different versions. We have a Plex version, and I've got a C2E version that where you would enter information about a user. And so they're kind of simple on the front end, but you'll see that we've been able to integrate in an input from Excel to determine what are the entries. And then we enter all that data through the application, stepping through every piece of the application to get there, including starting it in this case. And then we actually send through an API an output to Trello board online. So some of what's happening here, I'll just go through a little bit of what is in here. So in this case, we're looking at the CA2E. So we're using a Mocha terminal emulation. We've got some tasks in here to focus the window, moving the mouse, keystrokes to get the process up and running, and to see, just bring the application up and then log in. And then once we're there, we get the Excel information and we see, you'll see the Excel come up, read the data from Excel, and then we'll close that out and then begin to take this Excel information, which has been read into a multi-level array, and start to write that out into the application cells where that data needs to be entered, and every keystroke. And then the final process there is to create the information needed to indicate in a card on Trello that we have completed this task. Okay, I'm actually going to stop there for the moment and go to my virtual machine. Oh, I'm gonna have to move my in here. All right. Here we go. Minimize that. Okay, so I think I have my Java one up here, so I'll switch to the C2E since that's the one I had in the example. Okay, so this is the exact application that we just saw with the CA2E, exactly the same thing. I have actually edited this a little bit since I built the slides, simplified a few things, so there's always opportunities to learn as you work. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this. And we'll see this come up. And, Mocha's up there. Quickly, it brings up the application. It's going to enter the menu item. It's pretty fast. So let's walk through that. Now it's going to enter each of those users that it read from Excel and complete that task, 3 of those. So you can imagine, compared to a human making these entries, this is going to be very quick. And if that data is available, you know, in an Excel sheet coming in, then it's a very, very high value task to automate. Okay, that's it. It's completed the entire task. And we've seen now a full automation of a CA2E small little workflow. All right. Let's look at the Plex application. Plex is going to do much the same thing. I'm going to walk you through this one too. So obviously we're going to, in this case, we're doing a web application. So it's got its own URL. We're going to set up and log in, and then we're going to just make some clicks, right? So it's identifying the buttons, the objects on screen, and clicking those. And then we get to, again, similar, we're going to read that Excel data and get the information from Excel. And then you can see here from the data that was read in, we're going to write out each of those data items into the menus. In this case, again, into the web application. So let's run it, watch it run. So I think it's going to come up and maximize the screen so we can see everything there. So you can see first it's going to go through those side menus, selecting the exact menu it needs. Then it's going to work in the middle of the screen, accessing the menus it needs from the middle of the screen, in this case, the add option. And then you saw Excel pop up, so it read that data. Now it's going to write it out there just as it did in the CA2E. And just like, you know, these are independent applications, but these could easily be, you know, one application data or even the database reading directly from it and moving that data. So one example we use sometimes is the idea that IT has this need. Maybe they're bringing in a new application. You have the old application, a database, and you need to load that data. And there's a number of ways to do that. But if you're changing the database, maybe just automating the process of entering that data using RPA could be a very applicable way to do it. All right, I think it's done there. Very good. So let's take a quick look at the recorded version that I made. I'm just going to edit this. It's very short, but just to show you what it looks like to build a recorder functionality. So all I do, if I'm doing a web application, I'm going to click on this web and go to let me just run this first before I kind of mess with it. That way I can, we'll come back to it. So it's a very simple task, obviously, with just 5 or 6 steps. And it's going to go to the CM First website, and it's going to look at the offerings option, and then quickly, we couldn't really see it. It went into the area that talks about automation. And so now we've got those areas for some of these other solutions. So the way that works again is to, I guess I can just step through it, probably the simplest way. So step 1, right? I went over here and clicked on web, and we're going to show that web page immediately. Enter that information and brings it up. There we go. So yeah, I found the menu item. And of course, I'm going to move the mouse, so it may not work on the next step likely. But that's basically what you're doing, just clicking on the web, clicking on the area or the button that you need. Same thing with control for other types of applications, or what they call actions. Actions are simply, you can add a wait. Sometimes you need a little extra time because things happen so fast. You need to give the application time to kind of settle before you move to the next step. Maybe you add a half a second or whatever. You can add keyboard input for those entries. You can actually run an application or open the browser, and then you can actually just position the cursor. Different options for, I think I use that here, just to position a cursor in that location. And it pops back up and adds that piece to the recording. And again, as you close these, save them, you can re-edit. It gives you the option to split. Of course, you can add multiple new recordings to the application. All right. Let's go back to the slides. Actually, here. And I think I'm, see if I can drag this away and let them know. Yeah, there we go. Get that minimized. We'll bring up our slides. And now I have a Botstore view here. Let me try to find the right one. There we go. So this is the help. So Automate is by Help Systems. I should have said that earlier. So we're a partner with Help Systems. So if you're interested in this technology and capability, you know, you'll get the contact information a little bit. But this Botstore gives you, I don't know, it seems like hundreds. I'm not sure it's hundreds, but it's a lot of different pre-built bots. So you can download these bots and they're, you know, fully editable. You can customize them for your own use. You get things like run Microsoft Access macros, right? So there's IBMI commands. You can run them remotely. FTP functionality. File system, you know, file renames to a parent folder. There's lots and lots of these. Some detailed automate functionality, dynamic data sets to HTML, Microsoft Office bots. There's actually a whole section here. Let me select it for IBMI bots. There. So there's 4 bots, which doesn't maybe seem like a lot, but you can take these bots and modify them to do a lot of different things. So as I said, running commands remotely, system metrics, query files using ODBC. So those are pretty key basic functionality you can use to do a lot of different things for the IBMI. And you can look through the side here. You've got Active Directory, file system, Gmail, lots of Google capabilities with Drive and Sheets, you know, the Excel type tool, and lots of Microsoft functionality, Office, SQL, Teams integration, just a lot of different options there now available in the Botstore. We'll get into this, as I said, on Wednesday morning, more hands-on, and we'll work with bots from the Botstore in that process. Let's wrap up here with a few more slides. So this is some of the newer functionality that are available in the Botstore. The Active Directory, you know, to export AD groups and members to CSV. If you need those out to understand who's there, or maybe to re-import them into another directory management. Automate export audit reports, Dropbox or Box uploads and downloads, automating your file sharing, and PowerShell, and automate various file conversions, compression. So obviously that's a very powerful one too, being able to work with PowerShell. Some of the solution bots, I mentioned SSO, integrating between some specific applications related to mortgages. That's actually an area where the intelligent automation has been very successful in the mortgage and kind of accounting areas where there's a lot of data manipulation. And in this case, I'm sure mortgage application management, reconciliation, again, very accounting oriented process, archival bot for, again, blend and encompass loan, and then encompass download pipeline, retrieve attachments, a number of those kinds of things. So you can see that financial services area is a key area for some of the solution bots. And that's all I have for you today. That's the contact information. If you have questions, certainly put them in the chat. We'll take a look. And other than that, if you have questions about RPA, you can go to that website link, and there's a few videos there of previous sessions. Also, you can email or call. Any questions? Don't see anything in the chat at this point. Okay, so if there are no questions at this point, we will talk to you again on Wednesday for those that join the hands-on session. That will be a little more focused on business process automation, so maybe not quite as general, a little more focused on making connections and using bots to integrate things together. Thank you very much, and we'll talk soon.